the two African countries that were never colonized and how they did it. Imagine this. It's the late 1800s and a storm is sweeping across Africa. One by one, kingdoms, tribes, and nations fall under foreign control. Ancient borders vanish, and new lines are drawn by strangers thousands of miles away. Almost every flag flying over Africa is now European. Almost. Because in the middle of this tidal wave of colonization, two small but mighty nations stand firm. Two countries that refuse to bow to the empires of the day. Two countries that outthought, outfought, and outlasted colonial ambition. Today, we're telling the full, untold story of Ethiopia and Liberia, the only African nations never colonized, and exactly how they did it. If you believe history should be told in full color and not black and white, make sure to like this video right now, subscribe to the channel, and ring that bell so you never miss a story like this. And as we go through this journey, drop your thoughts in the comments, because your voice is part of keeping this history alive. The Scramble for Africa. By the late 19th century, Africa was no longer a distant mystery to Europe. It was the next prize. At the Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1880, 14 nations gathered in Berlin, Germany. Their mission? To decide who would get what parts of Africa. Not one African ruler, elder, or representative sat at that table. With a ruler and ink, they sliced through the continent, ignoring rivers, mountains, cultures, and centuries-old boundaries. Britain claimed vast territories from Egypt down to South Africa. France spread across West and Central Africa. Belgium seized the Congo. Germany took Namibia, Tanzania, and Cameroon. Portugal grabbed Angola and Mozambique. Even Italy, a young nation eager to prove itself, planted its flag in Eritrea and Somalia. It became known as the Scramble for Africa, and it was ruthless. European powers had steamships, repeating rifles, telegraphs, and industrial economies. African kingdoms had bravery, strategy, and rich cultures. But they were often outnumbered, divided, or outgunned. By the dawn of the 20th century, over 90% of Africa was under European control. But in that sea of colonized nations, two islands of freedom remained: Ethiopia in the east and Liberia in the west. Ethiopia. The lion that roared. Ethiopia wasn't just another African state. It was an empire with a legacy older than most European nations. Its history stretched back to the Kingdom of Aksum, a civilization that traded with Rome, Persia, and India. Its people were proud, its religion deeply rooted, and its kings descended from a line they claimed reached back to the Queen of Sheba and King Solomon. By the late 1800s, Emperor Menelik II ruled Ethiopia. Tall, dignified, and strategic, Menelik understood the growing threat of colonization. He modernized his army, building roads, buying weapons from France and Russia, and uniting Ethiopia's often fractious provinces under his authority. The Treaty of Wuchale, 1889. In 1889, Menelik signed the Treaty of Wuchale with Italy. The Amharic version stated Ethiopia could use Italy as a diplomatic intermediary with other nations if it wished. But the Italian version, sent to Europe, claimed Ethiopia was now an Italian protectorate. This was not a translation error. It was a calculated move to quietly claim Ethiopia without firing a shot. When Menelik discovered the deception, he rejected the treaty outright. His message was clear: Ethiopia would not be owned. The road to Adwa, Italy, embarrassed and determined, sent troops. By 1895, they had occupied parts of northern Ethiopia and believed they could march on the capital, Addis Ababa. But Menelik had been preparing. He called upon every province, every chief, every soldier. Empress Taytu, his brilliant and politically savvy wife, mobilized thousands of fighters and took command of her own forces. Menelik's call to arms was answered by more than 100,000 warriors, armed not only with swords and spears, but with rifles, artillery, and the fierce determination to defend their homeland. The Battle of Adwa, March 1st, 1896. At dawn in the rugged hills near the town of Adwa, the Italians, around 17,000 strong, advanced. They had modern weapons and European military training, but they also had arrogance, poor maps, and underestimated the Ethiopian resolve. The Ethiopians struck in waves. Warriors charged from the hills, riflemen took high ground, and artillery pounded the Italian positions. Italian lines crumbled, soldiers fled, entire units were surrounded. By the end of the day, over 7,000 Italians lay dead, and thousands more were captured. It was a decisive, world-shaking victory. Newspapers across the globe reported the incredible news. An African army had defeated a European colonial force, something almost no one thought possible. The aftermath of Adwa. Italy was forced to sign the Treaty of Addis Ababa, recognizing Ethiopia's full independence. Across Africa and the diaspora, Ethiopia became a symbol of pride, strength, and hope. Even when Mussolini's Italy invaded again in 1935, Ethiopia's spirit never broke. The occupation lasted only 5 years, and with the help of resistance fighters and allied forces, Ethiopia was restored to full sovereignty. Historians still count Ethiopia as never colonized because it was never permanently integrated into a European empire. Liberia, the land of the free. Liberia's path to independence was unlike any other in Africa. In the early 1800s, the American Colonization Society began resettling freed African Americans and formerly enslaved people from the United States to West Africa. These settlers, later called Americo-Liberians, established communities, blending African traditions with American-style governance. In 1847, they declared the Independent Republic of Liberia, making it Africa's first modern republic. Its capital, Monrovia, was named after U.S. President James Monroe, the diplomatic shield. When the scramble for Africa began, Liberia had already been recognized by the United States and several European nations. This recognition, along with U.S. diplomatic and economic ties, made colonizing Liberia politically risky for European powers. Britain and France pressed Liberia over borders, and there were occasional territorial concessions, but the core nation remained intact. Liberia's independence wasn't built on battlefield victories like Ethiopia's. It was maintained through diplomacy, alliances, and the protection of powerful friends. Two paths, one goal. Ethiopia and Liberia survived for different reasons. Ethiopia's survival came from unity, military strength, and strategic leadership. Liberia's survival came from early independence, international recognition, and political maneuvering. One fought as a lion on the battlefield. The other moved like a fox in the diplomatic arena. Yet both proved that African nations could remain free in an age of empire. Legacy and meaning. Today, Ethiopia's victory at Adwa is celebrated every year as a national holiday, a reminder of what unity and determination can achieve. Liberia's lone white star still shines on its flag, a beacon of early African self-rule. Their histories challenge the idea that colonization was inevitable. They remind us that even in the face of overwhelming odds, strategy, courage, and resilience can change the course of history. Two countries, two strategies, one unshakable truth: Africa was never powerless. These stories are more than history lessons. They are blueprints for courage, unity, and determination in the face of overwhelming odds. If this inspired you, don't let it end here. Like this video so more people can discover it. Subscribe for more untold African history. Share this with a friend who believes in the power of resilience. And most importantly, comment below. Which lesson from Ethiopia or Liberia do you think the world needs most today? Your voice matters. Your engagement keeps history alive.